Good day and welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. This is episode 27. Appreciate you joining us today and making us part of your podcast rotation. I am co-host John Easthope, and alongside me, as always, Robert Munich. How are we doing today, Robert?
I am doing great. That was actually a pretty fun week of Flames hockey. Take away that Toronto game, and goddamn, this team was actually pretty fun to watch last week.
Yeah, that's not something we say too often when it comes to the Calgary Flames. Really good road trip. Before we dive into the road trip and talk about how awesome that week was to watch, I'd like to thank you all again for your downloads, supports, and shares. Implore you all to continue to give us those 5-star ratings and reviews, and please tell your fellow Flame fans about us as we continue to grow the Red Mile Rundown. We appreciate each and every one of you and your downloads. Robert, you mentioned it, that road trip, that was fun. That was a lot of fun to watch those games. The Flames won the last three of the four. They won it in 3 different ways. What was the best part of that week for you watching the Flames over beating up the New York area teams?
I got to say, I mean, a couple things stand out. One was just the way they won the games. Like you said, they were all kind of in different fashion, which was pretty fun to watch. I mean, they absolutely walked all over the New York Rangers. Very, very impressive effort. At the same time, the Rangers were absolutely trash in that game. And the Rangers, they were bad again on the weekend. Like, they got dominated by Vancouver, but somehow pulled out a victory there. So, and then in New Jersey, had that incredible comeback. Their best comeback since the first game of the season against Vancouver. You know, you had another comeback against New York Islanders and a fun overtime win, a rare overtime win for the Calgary Flames. And then the other thing that kind of stood out to me was just the play of Matt Coronado. I know everybody's talking about him right now, but getting that New York hat trick, it was just so much fun to watch. That shot is so lethal. This kid is such a good hockey player, and he came up clutch on this road trip. So those are kind of the things that stood out to me a little bit.
I think my favorite part of this road trip, and this is going to sound weird, so just bear with me here. I think the best part of this road trip was the Toronto game. And the reason I say that is because you had that Toronto game and everything went so bad. Everything was so negative around this team. Everything just, there was no shining light. Even Dustin Wolf got lit up for 4 goals, 5 goals, and he didn't look all that great in that hockey game. He was hung out to dry. The defense was awful. The coaching decisions were interesting. It was almost like after that game, they all went into the locker room and they said, okay, enough of this. And the leaders stepped up. The veterans stepped up. Nazem Kadri decided it was going to be his turn to take this team and throw him on his back and say, enough is enough. We need these points. We need this road trip. And they went out against the New York Rangers. And yes, the Rangers were god-awful. They were just absolutely brutal. But the Flames took advantage of it. And that's what I love about these last 3 games of that road trip. They took advantage of a poor Rangers team. They took advantage of a shorthanded Devils team who decided that they were going to pack it in a third period. And they went out and they went toe-to-toe with a team that's probably on par with their skill level in the New York Islanders and were able to find a way to get that extra point in overtime. So this Toronto game, it was awful. Nothing good to say about it, but I think it really galvanized this group where they said, listen, we've got to help ourselves out here. And the only way to do that is to go out here and to play better. And I really like the response to that game. You mentioned Coronado. I thought he was brilliant. I think Nazem Kadri was the best Flame over the course of the rest of that road trip. And I give credit to Dustin Wolf and Dan Vladar, who both bounced back on this road trip in their respective starts. And that decor really stepped up as well without Mackenzie Weegar against the New York Islanders on Saturday. So really thought that this road trip galvanized this group. And you mentioned in the notes here for the show, I think this was a confidence booster for the Flames coming back home now. They got a really big week ahead of them here. Really big confidence booster for me on this road trip. What about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm right there with you. Like, that Maple Leaf game, it was a mess. It was really bad. One of their worst performances of the entire season. And basically, for that to happen at this point of the season, either 2 things could happen. One, the Flames could just say, like, you know what, maybe we're not good enough. And it could be a real shot to their confidence. And maybe they go into New York at Madison Square Garden and maybe lay another egg. You just never know. Or the second thing that could happen is, like you said, the leaders come together. They all say, okay, we can never let this happen again for the rest of the season. Like, we are in the mix for a playoff spot. This cannot happen. We believe in each other. You know, tomorrow night in Madison Square Garden, we're going to go out there. We're going to prove everybody wrong. And that's exactly what they did. And give them all the credit in the world for that. Because you could totally see a team being like, okay, we got crushed by Toronto 2 times, we got crushed by Colorado a couple times, like, maybe we're just not good enough. But they didn't do that. They have a lot of belief in each other, which is fantastic. And I think they really carried that momentum from that Maple Leaf game into the rest of the road trip. And they did a fantastic job winning 3 games in a row. First time in franchise history that they've won all 3 games on a road trip in the New York area. Super, super impressive stuff. I'm very impressed by the resilience of this group. Very impressed by their ability to kind of to get back up off the ground and step up and play some of their best hockey after one of their worst performances of the year. Really, really impressive stuff. So I could totally see them kind of using this as a bit of a confidence builder for the rest of the season here. If they can just continue to get good goaltending and they can continue to get strong play out of guys like Huberdeau and Kadri, who are leading the way for them right now, anything's possible. They could be right in that mix with St. Louis for that final wildcard spot.
It could have got out of hand as well for them as well against New Jersey when they fell down in that hockey game. They're going into that. They had that late second period goal against them, so they really stepped up there as well for me, stopping the bleeding, stopping what could have been a slide. That road trip could have turned again on them if they had let that game get to them. They still found a way. This is a resilient group we're finding here. They might not be able to get a ton of offense, but when they really need a goal or they really need a save, they seem to be getting it lately here and using that momentum to push them forward to the next game and to the next game. The trick now is to continue that and continue to get those efforts from everybody on the ice, from the goaltenders, from everybody here, because they have a big week coming up here and they're in a bit of a chase here for this wild card. St. Louis has decided they're never going to lose again. And the Flames have an opportunity here, though, if they can win these 3 games in hand they have on St. Louis. It's easier said than done, of course. They can leapfrog St. Louis still, so they still have the wild card chase. They still have their destiny in their own hands here. They still have an opportunity to control the narrative here if they can take care of their business. So big week for them coming off a big road trip we just had. The Flames are in a good spot. Both you and I have talked about this is how we're not sure this is a playoff team. They just don't score in the wild card chase. How big of this wild card chase is it for you now, Robert? St. Louis has played all these games extra compared to the Flames. The Flames have to make hay on their games in hand here. How big is this chase now for you, Robert? And what are you seeing in this wild card race?
It's definitely realistic to see the Flames getting into the playoffs, despite the fact that, you take a look at the standings and you see that the Calgary Flames right now have a minus 21 goal differential. The St. Louis Blues have a plus 10 goal differential. So there's a 31 goal difference between these two teams,
Jeez.
which is pretty wild. And yet the Flames are still right there behind them. It's very realistic. And I think one of the big reasons why I think that the Flames might be able to push their way into the playoffs is, number one, the goaltending, obviously. But number two, a few guys have really stepped up and started to, start creating offense at a higher level. So you take a look at Jonathan Huberdeau. In his last 6 games, he's got 9 points. If you take a look at his last 19, so that's since February 1st, he has 19 points in 19 games. Since February 1st, Nazem Kadri has 18 points in 19 games. Mackenzie Weegar has 16 points in 18 games. You have 3 guys that are actually starting to produce offense at a high-end level. One guy at a point per game, the other 2 close to a point per game. The Flames haven't had that all season long. And I think it's one of the reasons why they do have that minus 21 goal differential, because as we all know, they can't score. Mm-hmm. But now you see them, they put up 4 against the Islanders. They put up 5 against the Devils. They could have put up like 5 or 6 against New York Rangers if it wasn't for Shesterkin. Maybe this offense can kind of carry into the rest of the season here. Like, if Huberdeau and Kadri can be point per game or very close to point per game players, that could make all the difference in the world for this team. And St. Louis, I mean, they are on fire right now. 8-1-1 in their last 10. Jordan Kyrie's putting up like almost 2 points per game recently. Robert Thomas has been unreal. Like, that team they look like a wagon right now. but maybe they're peaking. Maybe they're peaking at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Maybe they could go on a losing streak here. They pretty much have to. If the Blues keep winning like this, the Flames, they're not going to be able to make it because it's just going to be too much to contend with. But if the Blues can just kind of get back to being that sort of slightly above 500 team, and the Flames can keep winning at the rate that they are, it's going to be a dogfight. And the one team I do not see in the mix anymore is Vancouver. I think Vancouver's done. Elias Pettersson's hurt. Niels Höglander, who was just playing his best hockey of the season for the Canucks, like he was a dominant forward for them over the last 10, 12 games. He's hurt. Quinn Hughes is being held together by duct tape. Thatcher Demko, he's supposed to play tonight on Monday, but he might be 70%. He'll probably get hurt again. The Canucks are a mess. So I think they're done. I think Utah's done. I really believe that it's coming down to Calgary and St. Louis for this last spot here. So if the Flames, if they can keep getting that offensive production from their top players, I think they could probably sneak their way in. Who knows? Do you kind of see it the same way?
I do. I think Vancouver gave it their best shot Saturday. I think we saw their best swing against the Rangers on Saturday, and it wasn't nearly good enough to beat a, let's be honest, less than stellar, less than average Rangers team over the last couple of weeks here. They have a big game against the Devils on Monday night, so I'm not ready to close the coffin on them quite yet, but I'm very, very close. They dropped that game against New Jersey, and I don't think they have any hope because the Flames are finding ways to get all these points. St. Louis, again, they have decided they're never going to lose again. They keep racking up all these points, and they're starting to pull away a little bit here. As nice as a story as Utah's been, I just think they just don't have the runway there to catch up anymore. And so it kind of is a 2-horse race here. The Flames have done a really good job. Got to remember, they did it without Michael Backlund, without Mackenzie Weegar on Saturday as well, where the Canucks cannot seem to overcome their injury situation. They just can't seem to get to that next level and get consistent play from other guys, from their depth guys. Nobody talks about Jake DeBrusk. Nobody's really talking about Brock Besser other than the trade rumors. You're just not hearing those guys' names. Their depth guys aren't stepping up, and they're just not getting the goaltending they were getting earlier in the year. As good as Lankinen has been for them, he's been only okay the last little while here. So they're really falling off here. They have to have something large come their way, some big momentum for them to make another charge here, because the Flames and the Blues, they're just not slowing down. And the schedule for the Flames gets a little easier this week with Seattle coming in on Tuesday, so an opportunity for more points here. So Vancouver really has to make hay on the rest of their road trip that they're currently on here to keep pace. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that without their leading scorer in Elias Pettersson, and with a 65% of Hughes. I just don't see it myself, to be honest. You talk about injuries, we talk about missing players, we talk about Backlund not being around for the Flames, we talk about Mackenzie Weegar missing the game Saturday. It leads to the conversation, Robert, of who is this team's MVP and who are the most important players for the Flames. And so you propose that we kind of do a bit of a power ranking of our top 5 guys of who's really important to this Flames organization right now as they push towards the playoffs here. Interested to see how your top 5 stack up against my top 5. I don't know if you want to go first or second with your list here, Robert, but who do you have here in your 5 in your power rankings?
Yeah, well, let's just go back and forth.
Sure.
So we'll start number 1. It's obviously Dustin Wolf, right? You got Dustin Wolf as number 1.
Yeah, I wanted to be a little hot takey here, but I'm not going to be. It has to be Dustin Wolf. We talked about all year long how this Flame team is where they are because Dustin Wolf's dragging them along. He has to be the MVP of this team.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, we've talked about Dustin Wolf probably every single episode of this podcast just about how good he is. We probably don't need to dive into that too much. So number 2 on my list, this was hard because I had 3 guys that could be at number 2, but I decided to go with Mackenzie Weegar as my number 2. Who do you have as your 2?
We were talking last week in these games here, and I mentioned that Nazem Kadri would be this team's MVP, in my opinion, if it wasn't for Dustin Wolf. I put him at that second spot. I just like what he brings as the leader of that forward group. He seems to be pushing this wagon along for the Flames here, getting points, important goals. I have Nazem there as a big leader as well for this Flames group. My third guy on the list is Mackenzie Weegar, so I'm right there with you with Mackenzie too, but I have Nazem at number 2.
Yeah, I think both are really good picks for number 2. I don't really think you can go wrong with either or because I mean, Nazem Kadri is the guy that drives the bus offensively for this Flames team. Like without Kadri, like just imagine like what the offense would look like without him, because he's the kind of guy that really takes control over games, whether it's him carrying the puck, up the ice. Like he's by far the best puck carrier on the team, him or Connor Zary. He's a dynamic playmaker. He gets a ton of shots on net, and he scored a lot of clutch goals this year. Like he scored a ton of third period goals, a lot of big goals for this team. So yeah, I think Kadri at number 2 makes a lot of sense. I think the reason why I had Weegar at number 1 is because you take a look at that Flames blue line, and it's not deep. Like it's really not. And Rasmus Andersson is not having a great year. So, basically what the Flames were going to rely on heading into the year was that Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Andersson were legit top pairing defensemen. And Andersson has not been that this year. And Weegar's had to step up and take on the biggest minutes, take on tough matchups. He's playing first power play unit. He's playing on the penalty kill. He's driving the offense from the blue line. Like you take a look at his stats, 16 points in his last 18 games. He leads the Flames in assists by a large margin. Leads the Flames in assists by 6. He has 34. The next closest guy is Jonathan Huberdeau at 28. He's a plus 14, which is 6 better than the next closest player, who's Joel Hanley. And when you take a look at all the underlying numbers, Mackenzie Weegar literally leads the Flames in pretty much every major shot metric at 5-on-5 this season. And the most important one is the Flames have outscored their opposition 48-37 at 5-on-5 with Weegar on the ice. By far the best percentage-wise in terms of goals for, goals against on the entire team. And then you take a look at a guy like Rasmus Andersson. Flames have been outscored 39-50 with him on the ice. So like you need a guy like Mackenzie Weegar to step up, and you need a guy like Mackenzie Weegar to really drive play for the Calgary Flames. And that's exactly what he's done this year. And I think if you take him off this roster for the long term, I think they are screwed. Like, if you're a Flames fan, you're hoping and praying that this injury to Mackenzie Weegar that kept him out of the game on Long Island is just going to be a short-term thing. And it's not that serious, because I think without Mackenzie Weegar, this team would be in big trouble. So that's why I had him at number 2 on the list. But I don't think you go wrong with either of those two guys.
Yeah, we saw how the defense shapes up without Mackenzie Weegar on Saturday, and they had a little trouble with the speed of the Islanders through the neutral zone and things like that. And I think that's something that Mackenzie Weegar really brings to this lineup. He settles them down back there. I love that pick for second on your list. I really do. Between him and Nazem, it was really a coin flip for me of who to put 2, who to put 3, because I think they're both really, really important to the group because they lead this Flames team. I think both of them would be in that captain conversation if Backlund wasn't around and was the captain. I think they're just that important. And Huska trusts both these guys. They're both out there in key situations. You just went through the whole list of what Mackenzie Weegar brings to the Flames, and I think Ryan Huska trusts him to bring those things to this lineup. Who do you have at 3? I put Mackenzie Weegar there at 3, and we just talked about him, but who did you have at 3 on your list?
Yeah, I had Kadri at 3. So we had a similar 2-3, and then for number 4, I thought it was pretty easy. I thought it was Jonathan Huberdeau. I honestly don't know if there's anybody else that even comes close to getting that number 4 spot. Who do you have at number 4?
Good. I'm going to make a debate. I'm going to make an opinion.
Oh, wow.
Here. I love Jonathan Huberdeau, and I think he's really important to the Calgary Flames, but I put Morgan Frost in that spot. The Flames
Frost?
Yeah, listen to me. Hear me out here.
Okay.
Hear me out here. The Flames are searching for centermen. They're searching for guys that can bring in that secondary scoring. They're searching for guys they can build that core around. And I think Morgan Frost, what he brings to this Flames lineup is very valuable to this team. He helps slot guys better. I think you get a lot better with both Sharon Govich and Postel on the wing than at center. I think what Frost brings in the faceoff dot is very important because this Flames team sucks in the face-off dot. He's automatically made that power play a lot better. He's out there in key situations for this team, and I think you're seeing Ryan Huska trust this guy more and more and more. I think he's a key guy for this Flames team being built around for now and for down the road here. It's a lot of tough minutes now. We saw him step up in the absence of Michael Backlund. I think he's really proven himself to be a hot commodity for this Flames group, and therefore I think he's in that conversation of guys that's very important to this Calgary Flames team. Yes, people come back at me, but he's not scoring a ton. That's fine. That'll come. I have faith that will come for Morgan Frost, because what else he brings to this lineup has been proven very valuable. And it starts with his faceoffs. It starts with that power play unit that he's on. And when you have a coach throw this guy out there in key situations defensively and offensively, you know he's got the trust of that coach, and you know he's important to that coach. So that's why I make the case for Morgan Frost.
But like, you think he's more important than Jonathan Huberdeau is to this team right now? Like, if you were to take Huberdeau out of the lineup, or you take Morgan Frost out of the lineup, like, which one would be the bigger impact on the team? You think it would be Frost because of the slotting?
I think it's Frost because he does more. As Jonathan Huberdeau scores and he can play make, sure. But Morgan Frost, he's out there. He's killing games off. He's first power play. He's face-offs. I think he slots guys a lot better. I think he's very important to this Flames team. I think he's right there with Jonathan Huberdeau. And if I were to put a fifth guy on the list, it would be Jonathan Huberdeau, just for argument's sakes here. But I think he's that important to this group.
Okay, I like it. That is a hot take. That is sizzling hot. My only pushback would be, I mean, you already mentioned it, but just the production. I mean, Morgan Frost has 2 goals in 19 games since joining the Flames, only 6 points to Jonathan Huberdeau's 19 during the same span. And Huberdeau's, he's playing on the penalty kill. He's scoring lots of goals. He's scoring clutch goals. He's making plays. He's got 11 assists in his last 19 games. Mm-hmm. He is a better two-way forward than he was before. So I think Huberdeau is clearly the number 4 most important player on the team right now. I respect the Frost the Frost argument there. I like it. I like that it's different. But I got to say, I think Huberdeau is that number 4 guy. Hopefully in the future it'll become more of a kind of a closer debate between, a guy like Huberdeau and Frost. Like, if the Flames do end up extending Morgan Frost this summer, because the package is there. Like, everything you mentioned, like, it's tantalizing, but at the same time, you still need a little bit more production out of the guy, I think, before you put him in that same conversation as Huberdeau.
Yeah, fair. That's absolutely fair. I love Huberdeau and what he brings to this lineup. I love the tenacity he's shown now. He's getting into the dirty areas more. He's providing that offense. He is penalty killing now, which is weird to watch him do after seeing him in Florida not even look at the penalty kill. So the way that he's transformed his game is very important for the Flames, that he continue to get production from Huberdeau. So I don't hate that at number 4. I really like him there. But I really do have Morgan Frost up there. I just like him that much. Who's final on your list there, Robert?
I had such a hard time with this one because I take a look at this roster, and basically after those 4 guys that we just mentioned, I do think there's like a pretty big drop off just in terms of overall importance. Like could you throw Michael Backlund at number 5? I mean, we've seen what's happened with the penalty kill, the defensive matchups. Like, it has not been easy without Michael Backlund. Like, you take a look at the New Jersey game. Like, I know the Flames win by 2, so you take a look at the score and they're like, oh, they must have played really well. The first 2 periods of that New Jersey game were not impressive. Like, the Devils really took it to the Flames, and it was 3-1 after 2. Mm-hmm. Dustin Wolf had to make some incredible saves, and I think not having Michael Backlund really hurt there. You take a look at the Islander game. It wasn't the most dominant, impressive effort. The Flames had to once again make another comeback to win that game. So, it's tough with him out of the lineup. But then you take a look at Kevin Ball, and we saw what the Flames look like without him in the lineup. And it's not great. They lost a lot of games without Kevin Ball. They don't slot very well. Ball is by far and away their best left pairing defenseman, the left shot defenseman. So, there's that. There's Matt Coronado, who's a natural goal scorer on a team that can't score goals. Like, he's important. Could you throw Rasmus Anderson in there? He's having a really, in my opinion, I think he's having a really bad season. But, I mean, he still is an important cog to this team. So it was really between those guys. And, I mean, I guess he could... Number 5, I don't know. I honestly don't know who to pick out of that group of 4. Backlund, Ball, Coronado, or Anderson. Like, it's a cop-out answer. I'm giving 4 players for 1 spot. But I really think, like, those players kind of mixed together. I think they all kind of have the same level of importance to this team right now. And, I mean, if gun to my head, I had to choose one, I'd honestly might be leading Kevin Ball right now. Because, like I said, he's their best left shot defenseman. We saw what the Flames look like without him in the lineup. I think he's been excellent this season. Like, from the defensive side of the game, like, he just breaks up so many different plays with a little bit of physicality, a little bit of nastiness, and he's actually for such a big guy, he's actually a pretty good skater, and he shoots the puck pretty well. He's a decent puck mover. Like, I really, really like his game, and I hope the Flames end up signing him to a long-term contract this summer, whether it's 6, 7, 8 years. I would love to see that. So I might go Kevin Ball at number 5, which is crazy. Like imagine at the start of the season, you're like ranked the 5 most important Calgary Flames, and the fact Kevin Ball is even in that conversation is a testament to how great he's played this year. So F it, I'll go Kevin Ball at number 5.
I love it. I love it. It should be Rasmus Sanderson there. It should be. We should be sitting here talking about how reliable Rasmus Sanderson is and how he's playing right there with Mackenzie Weegar, how he's controlling the power play and helping the depth of this organization, that he's reliable in key situations. That's the conversation we should be having if Rasmus Andersson was playing to how Rasmus Andersson can be playing. That's what makes this last spot so intriguing in that whole list of players that you gave us, because the guy you think should be there isn't there. It's other guys. It's his D partner. I like that call there. Kevin Ball, I think, covers up a lot of what we're seeing from Rasmus Andersson just based on how he's playing. You could look at like Michael Backlund and how he was missed so much time for this Flames organization over the last couple weeks here. But these guys covered up for Michael Backlund, and it didn't look pretty when he first went out of the lineup. They figured it out. So, but he's still very important to this team here. So I like your choice of Kevin Ball there. It should be Anderson is who we should be talking about, but I love that call with Kevin Ball. I really do hope as well the Flames sign him to a long-term contract going forward as well. We talk about Michael Backlund here a little bit as well. It looks like he's back in time for this next stretch of games at home. It's a big stretch here for the Flames this week. A game against Seattle. They have Thursday. They have Dallas coming through. They have a Battle of Alberta on Saturday before the Avalanche starting off next week. It's a big stretch for the Flames. We look at the schedule here, the timing of Michael Backlund back in the lineup. Hopefully they have Mackenzie Weegar. How big is this week, Robert, for the Flames? And you asked the question to me, can they go 650 at the rest of this season or to keep pace with St. Louis and overtake them for that wild card? It's a tougher schedule than some might think, but how important is it to start off this week, though, with these set of games on the right note?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even necessarily like this week that's important. It's every single game between now and the end of the season is critical. Like they cannot be giving away points because, like you said, they're probably going to need to play at about a 650 winning percentage, which would be in their last 13 games. They'll have to go somewhere around 8-4-1, and that'll get them to 94 points. I don't think St. Louis is going to keep playing at this level between now and the end of the year. Like that would be insane. So I think it'll probably be like 94, 95 points to get in. And that's like an 8-4-1 record or a 9-4 record that the Flames are going to have between now and the end of the season. And that's going to be tough. I mean, you take a look at this week, you got Dallas coming in, who's playing great hockey, arguably the best team in the league in the new year. And you got the Battle of Alberta. Luckily for the Flames, I just saw a tweet from Jason Gregor saying that both Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are unlikely to play this entire week. So if the Flames can go into Edmonton on Saturday night without McDavid and Draisaitl, that becomes a lot more of a winnable game. So if you can beat Seattle tonight, I guess on Tuesday night when people are listening to this, if they can beat Seattle and beat Edmonton and maybe get a point out of Dallas, like that would be absolutely massive, because I mean we're getting into that territory where it's must-win games for this team. So yeah, I mean it's absolutely critical. The biggest games are going to be the ones against the bad teams. Like you take a look at their schedule. We got Seattle coming in on Tuesday night. You have to win that game. And then they also play the Ducks and the Sharks twice over their last 13 games. In those 5 games against Seattle, Anaheim, and San Jose, you have to win every single one of them, or at least get, say, 9 out of 10 points. If you don't do that, I'd argue that the season is probably over for this team. So tonight's game against Seattle is going to be absolutely massive. Biggest game that's been played at the Saddledome in a long time.
Mm-hmm. You have to take care of business against those teams below you in the standings. The Kraken, the Ducks, the Sharks, Utah. Those teams you have to take care of those business. The trick here for the Flames will be is you have to find ways to steal points. couple of games with Vegas. Got the Kings, the Avalanche, the Stars, the Wild, the Oilers. You have to find ways to steal points from those teams. We've seen those elite teams, the Avalanche, the Stars, just come in here and they've just taken care of the Flames very easily. We saw the Leafs do it as well. Vegas has had a history of doing it to the Flames. You've got to find a way in these games to steal points while taking care of business versus those teams below you in the standings. It's a tall task. It absolutely is a tall task to go 8-4-1 over your last few games here. But it's also very doable if you just show up and play how we saw on that road trip. You play your game, you take care of your business, you take advantage of your power plays, you have a strong penalty kill. You can find ways to do it, but you got to find a way to maybe get a win off of Vegas, get the game against the Kings in overtime, find a way to steal a point or win against the Avalanche or the Stars. The points are out there to be found if you are able to put in the work and get to it. It's a huge, huge week to start this off for me. And I think if you're going to continue this playoff push, this wild card chase push, it's got to start with beating Seattle. There's no bones about it. You need both points against Seattle. You have to be able to find a way to get points off of the Stars and or the Oilers this week, just to put yourself in the driver, continue to put yourself in the driver's seat here and take advantage of the games in hand you have that St. Louis doesn't have anymore. A more condensed schedule for the Flames down the stretch here because they have those 3 extra games to play than St. Louis, but it's there and it's doable for this team. We've seen them play at a high level. They got to keep doing that here. Getting Michael Backlund back should help this team. Continually finding offense from Nazem Kadri and seeing Coronado heat up a little bit. If they can get guys like Sharon Govich and possible to chip in a little bit more as well, I think this Flames team's in a good spot, a good situation here if they continue to get the goaltending and find ways to score goals. But you have to take advantage of those teams below you in the standings and then steal some points off of these teams that are ahead of you in the standings here. Just find a way to get things done here.
Yeah, and like when you take a look at their more difficult games, so like I said, you got Edmonton without McDavid and Draisaitl. That becomes winnable. You take a look at the very last game of the season, they're playing the LA Kings. That's the rescheduled game from the Fires. So they're going to play on the last day of the regular season. The Kings will have a playoff spot locked up by then. I would imagine they would be resting probably a few of their star players. All of a sudden that becomes a winnable game. Then you take a look at, they play the Minnesota Wild, who have been awful lately. They have a ton of injuries. Can you take advantage of the Minnesota Wild? Like you're playing good teams, but they're beatable situations. And another thing too is this team, they have to take as many games to overtime as possible. You cannot afford to lose games in regulation right now. So it's more likely than not they're gonna lose against Dallas, Colorado, and Vegas twice. If you get like 2 of those games to overtime and give yourself those extra 2 loser points, like that would be massive for this team. So, it's not completely unrealistic to think that they can go like 8-4-1 when you break down the schedule, kind of like you and I just did. But they got to take care of business against those bad teams. They got to get a lot of games to overtime and take advantage of an Edmonton without their best players. Take advantage of an LA that'll probably be resting players. Take advantage of a Minnesota team that has a ton of injuries, like Joel Eriksson and Kirill Kaprizov. Like it's there for the taking. It's not going to be easy, like we've been mentioning, but it's definitely there. They can do it if they get the goaltending and they continue to get a little bit of offense. And I guess another just 2 more encouraging things from that road trip for me was the play of Coronado. We talked about him just scoring like ridiculous goals. Like that shot is crazy. And then also I thought Connor Zary started to pick up his pace a little bit. And I think he's played a little bit better since returning from that injury. So if you could get Coronado to continue to score goals, if you can get Zary to step up and be kind of that, 50 point pace player that he was before he got injured, those could be game changers. And I was kind of thinking about Coronado, and I'm curious to get your opinion on this. Is Matt Coronado does he have the best shot of like anyone on the Flames? Like who is the last Calgary Flame player that has a shot that reminds you of Matt Coronado? Because I was thinking about, I was like, is it Monahan? Well, like Monahan was really good in tight. Like he was great at tipping pucks, and he was great, 5 feet within the crease at putting pucks away. but I don't think the shot was quite at the same level as Coronado. So like I didn't know if it was him, but I was thinking like maybe like Mike Camilleri. Is that a comparable? Like I'm curious, like who would you compare Coronado shot to in terms of guys that have played for the Flames over the last like 15, 20 years?
Nobody, really. Like you mentioned, Monahan, he's good in tight. Camilleri was really good, but he didn't have the release that Coronado has. It's almost a deceptive release that he has. You think of Sharon Govich's release; that's kind of a weird little release, but he has a really good release. So, like your mind goes to guys like Jerome McGinley. You're like, well, is that too high of praise for a guy like Coronado? But it
Yeah,
really isn't. It's on that level. I don't think we've had a flame shooter like Coronado in a long, long time, and it might be like like Jerome's. Not saying that he's the next Jerome McGinley going to start breaking franchise records down the road here, but when it comes to a pure release and NHL shot, he's up there. He's got to be one of the best the Flames have had in a long, long time, if not the best they've had since Jerome. And he's using it. That's the best part of this is he's using it and he's deceptive with it and he's not afraid to let it rip. Those goals he scored in that road trip, all of them that he scored were just absolutely beautiful shots that he was able to find some space and able to make the goalie and just pick the one spot the goalie gave him, pick it and use it and score a goal. So for me, it's better than Camilleri's release. It's better than Sharon Govich's release. All due respect to how Monahan releases the puck, it's better than that. It might be Jerome McGinley level, and that's high praise for this young player.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I go as far as Jerome. I mean, Jerome, multiple 50 goal scorer. I don't know if I ever see Coronado getting to that level, but like another name that kind of came to my head was Tyler Toffoli. Like Toffoli had a great shot in that 2022-2023 season when he scored, I think it was like 35 goals.
Yeah.
Him and Coronado kind of have a pretty similar shot in that regard. So yeah, I was just kind of fun to look back on it and just appreciate just like what a dynamic skill set that is. Because when you take a look at the Flames lineup, especially up front, there's not a lot of like dynamic play or dynamic qualities to a lot of these players. I think like Kadri's ability to carry the puck up the ice, I'd say that's pretty dynamic. Same thing with Connor Zary and his ability to carry the puck and dangle. But like outside of that, there's really not a whole heck of a lot. But I would also throw Coronado's shot in there, like just that hard snapshot. Like it is lethal, and I could absolutely see him being a multiple 30 goal scorer in the NHL throughout his career. So it's exciting for the Calgary Flames to have a guy like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to watch someone play like that as well. This team works so hard for their offense, so hard for these goals. It's nice to have that one guy on this roster that can just take it, rip it, grip it, and give us a nice, beautiful goal here. Kind of a fun conversation here, Robert, to wrap up the podcast this week. This is something that you had some conversations on X about, and something that's kind of debated back and forth because normally I'm a big fan of doing something like this. You asked, should the Flames make an offer sheet this summer? And so for me, normally I would be all over this, be like, yes, this is another avenue that teams have to bring in elite players. We saw St. Louis successfully do it, and both Holloway and Broberg are doing really good things for St. Louis and helping their playoff push. I love the offer sheet thing, the Kotkaniemi one we had a few years ago, the Sebastian Aho reply type of thing. And people are always scared about the retribution. I just think it adds to the allure of offer sheets and the game here. But for me, this summer, I think the Flames need to stay away from the offer sheet. They have an opportunity in 2026 to have a couple of first-round draft picks. This team, I don't know how good they're going to be next year. It potentially could be a bottom 10 team. And there's a very juicy nugget in next year's playoffs, or next year's draft, in Gavin McKenna at the top of that draft class. There's a few other guys in that draft class. The 2026 draft is a big, deep draft. So for me, an offer sheet this summer doesn't make sense because knowing what's coming in this draft and knowing how deep this draft is going to be in 2026 and the elite level talent are interesting where you are on this conversation with the Flames and an offer sheet this summer and them potentially using it or not using it here.
Yeah, I mean, I find it very difficult to see them being able to take advantage of an offer sheet this summer because the way that you can acquire a player through that is by putting a team in a position where if they match the offer sheet that you had just given them, that it completely screws up everything in their salary cap, which is basically what the St. Louis Blues did to the Edmonton Oilers last summer. And with the increase in salary cap and all the teams, having there's a lot of teams losing players to free agency that make a lot of money. With those two things in mind, I just don't really see it as a realistic option. But I posted the clip from Flames Nation. Like Darren Dreger was on Barn Burner, and he was adamant that the Calgary Flames are going to be super aggressive when it comes to offer sheets this summer, and that kind of worries me a little bit. Like I'd be okay with them using like a second or third round pick in an offer sheet to acquire somebody, but that first cannot be on the table, right? Like you mentioned it. Like what happens if things go wrong next season? Like what happens if Dustin Wolf next season isn't quite as good as he is this year? The Flames are all of a sudden in that lottery conversation. Depending on what Craig Conroy does this summer, like, maybe he adds to this roster and maybe they become quite a bit better team. I don't know how they're going to do that over just one off season. So there's a legit possibility that this Calgary Flames team could be a bottom 5 team in the NHL next year. And if you give up that 2026 first round pick to offer sheet, a Bowen Byram, for example, or a Marco Rossi or something like that, and all of a sudden that pick becomes a top 5 pick in that 26 draft, which is supposed to be loaded, that would be embarrassing. Mm-hmm. That would be a franchise crippling decision. So Craig Conroy cannot use that first round pick. And basically what that means is that you cannot offer a player $1 more than $4,580,917 on a contract. If you go above that number, that means that you have to give up your 26 first round pick. Mm-hmm. So the conversation becomes, who among restricted free agents can you sign to an offer sheet to the max number at $4.58 million and also put a team in a kind of a salary cap situation, put them in a terrible position where they can't match it. They literally cannot match it, just like the Blues did with the Oilers. And I don't know, who would that be? Like, I don't know if you took a look at the list of RFAs, but like, are there any guys that stand out to you that are a realistic possibility for an offer sheet for the Flames?
Not at that cost. And see, the guys that you really want to do that on like a Marco Rossi, say, for example, because he's a centerman, that's what the Flames are in the market for. Those type of guys, you're going to want to make that into that $5.5 million range. Make a team like Minnesota really think about it. But then you got to weigh, is that player really going to be better for this team now and long term versus what we could potentially be giving up in that first round draft pick? You look in that draft and take McKenna out of it. There is guys in this draft coming up in 2026 that are going to be franchise level guys that are really could be altering. You look at a guy like Mathis Preston in Spokane as a centerman, Ryan Lynn as a defenseman in Vancouver, Colin Fitzgerald in Peterborough. There's guys that project to be your top end guys for your franchise. So for me, it's weighing the options of, do we put the money into this resource, into this player that we could get right now, or do we use this to draft and develop a guy that could potentially be this down the road for us? Where are we at here? So for me, these guys that are RFAs this summer, there are some intriguing names out there, including a guy like Marco Rossi, but is he worth it at that cost and giving up those assets to bring it? Would you trade a first plus for Marco Rossi? Would you trade it, or would you want to trade him only to see what you get for a second round draft pick? It's all about cost management for me and asset management for me here. See, for me, I wouldn't be doing it. I just wouldn't be doing it knowing what's coming up in this draft. And I'm a big draft and develop guy. I like that. As tantalizing as these players are, I just always lean towards the draft. So at the cost there, that 4.58.
Yeah.
I just don't know. A team's going to look at that and be like, well, our salary cap's going up. So for 1 year, we might be a little bit tight, but down the road, salary cap's going to be $100 million. We can match this price and we can hold on to this price. So you're going to have to make it more expensive than that. And then that's where you have your cost between the player and the draft pick.
Yeah. And you have to entice the player to sign it with your organization. It's not like you just 100%. Give them the offer sheet and they just automatically take it. Like, you got to convince them to sign. And we'll continue to use Marco Rossi as an example. So say you want to offer sheet him. Minnesota's got a ton of cap space that's going to open up this summer because the Parise and Suter buyouts are coming off the books. So then, they're going to have like an extra, say, $12-14 million to play with on top of all the extra cap space they're going to get from pending free agents. in order to actually put Minnesota Wild in a corner to the point where they're like, okay, like we can't do this, you'd have to offer Marco Rossi like $8-9 million, or else they're just going to match. Like, what's the point?
Yep.
Same thing with Buffalo. Like, there's JJ Peterka. Buffalo has a ton of cap space. If you throw an offer sheet at Peterka and he accepts it, Buffalo's just they're just gonna match it because they have a ton of cap space. Same thing with like Matthew Nyes. You're gonna have to spend more than that $4.58 million. Mason McTavish is gonna be more than that. Just taking a look at the list here, like Fabian Zetterlund will probably take more than that. Bowen Byram's gonna take more than that. So if you are gonna use an offer sheet and it's gonna be in that $4.5 million range, some of the guys that I was looking at would be, maybe like a Capo Caco, but I think Seattle would match that easily. Alex Laferriere in Los Angeles, maybe you think that if you give him top 6 minutes, maybe he can flourish. Maybe that could be a target, like Jack Quinn, but once again, I think Buffalo matches that. Interesting name, and Nick on Twitter came up with this one, was Maverick Bourque, because Dallas is going to be right up against it with their salary cap, with Wyatt Johnston's new contract kicking in and Mikko Rantanen's new contract kicking in. How much money are they going to have to re-sign Maverick Bourque? Could you throw a 2-year deal at him worth $4.5 million? Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one. There's like Jonathan Begrin in Detroit, maybe with more opportunity. They think that he could flourish. Same with like Nick Robertson, maybe a Ty Cartier out of Seattle. Like, now we're really grasping for straws at this point in time. So, to hear Drager just be so adamant that the Flames are going to use this and the Flames are going to pursue this did kind of concern me a little bit. Like, just with like how adamant he was, it made it sound like the Flames are willing to give up that first round pick in an offer sheet. And I hope and pray Craig Conroy does not do that. I hope that he has the long-term vision to not give up that draft pick. Because the Flames, if the Flames were like legit cup contenders, sure, go out and use that draft pick on an offer sheet 10 times out of 10. I don't give a shit. But when you're in year 2 of a rebuild and the only reason why you're not in the basement of the NHL standings is because of your goaltender this season, you're in no position whatsoever to be risking that first round pick in 26. But the scary thing is look who's in charge. Mm-hmm. Murray Edwards. We saw this in 2015. They got in the playoffs and he said, we're going in. We're going all in. We're trading draft picks.
Yeah.
We're signing big free agents. Like, we're ready to win. Could Murray say, hey, we have our next Mika Kiprusoff. Look what Kipper did for us. Kipper single-handedly got us into the playoffs 5 years in a row from 04 to 09. Can the exact same thing happen with Dustin Wolf? Let's get him some support and some help, and let's do it through an offer sheet and give it that first-round pick. I could see him like really pushing Craig Conroy in that direction. So I hope it doesn't happen. I think it would be so short-sighted of them to give up a first-round pick via an offer sheet. I think it would be a monumental mistake. Monumental. But who knows with this owner, right? I mean, you never know.
Also got to keep in mind as well, this came to my mind as you were speaking there, Robert, and Murray Edwards is weird. Let's just get that out of the way. But you also mentioned, and not that long ago, the Flames salary cap, this number that they have in front of them and all this quote unquote space they have is going to get eaten up in a hurry as well. So they have to be very cognizant of the fact that they have a bunch of guys in house as well. And so someone could come along and try to offer sheet their guys as well. So you have to make sure that you're willing and prepared to do it both ways. Make sure that you have enough salary cap space that you can sign your Zari, Frost, Ball, Wolf, Coronado when these guys come up and they need extensions over the next couple of seasons here. So it's not only just about putting other teams in a bind, is you don't want to put yourself in a bind either with the salary cap structure. So it's a lot of moving pieces here. I'm with you here, Robert. I hope that first round draft pick is not in the mix for anything other than the Flames drafting a really good player next year. Because that draft, there's you go through the list and there are guys that will intrigue you with the skill set. Yes, we're talking about 16, 17-year-old hockey players and They're hard to project 4 or 5 years down the road, but you read some of these early scouting reports on some of these players, and there are some intriguing guys out there, guys that could potentially develop into some really good high-end hockey players. And is it worth going after a Marco Rossi, or would you rather develop a guy like a Matthias Preston? It's a guy I'm really high on in Spokane. Go watch his games. Go figure out what kind of player he is, because that's a great hockey player. Right-handed centerman, can do a lot of things well and helps the Spokane Chiefs a heck of a lot right now. But it all comes down to making sure your asset management is on point. And I really hope that Murray Edwards stays out of it this time around. Just lets Craig Conroy go use his plan, develop his plan, and allow him to actually build this roster. Nothing is worse, and I keep saying it, nothing is worse than this owner who likes to chase the smallest bit of success. Let Craig Conroy build something. Robert, anything else? Anything else from you here?
Just to kind of like to put a bow on it. I know we talked a lot about like the theory of an offer sheet, but in terms of actual names, like I'll just throw out 3 names here that I think are actually realistic for the Flames. So one, we discussed it a little bit, Maverick Bourque. I do think it makes sense. You know, he led the AHL in scoring last year. I believe he was the AHL MVP last year. He's got, I think, 22 points in about 60 games or 50 games with the Dallas Stars this year. In a bigger role up the lineup, I do think Bourque could be a 50, 60 point guy in the NHL. Dallas, they still have a lot of money on the books, like I said, with Wyatt Johnston and Rantanen's contract kicking in. They still have Sagan making over 9. You know, they have guys like Marchment making close to 5. Heiskanen's at 8. Like they're going to be in tough when it comes to the salary cap, and they still have to re-sign guys like Matt Duchene, Jamie Benn, Michael Granlund potentially. So you could probably put Dallas in an uncomfortable position there. Yeah. Another name that intrigues me is Nick Hague in Vegas. I think it was 2 years ago, I wrote an article at Flames Nation saying that the Flames should offer sheeted him a couple years ago when he was in the middle of a contract stalemate with the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think they had less than $1 million of cap space to sign him. And I was like, if you're the Flames, like, why would you not just throw $3-4 million at this guy and give up like a second round pick for him? He's a large man, big left shot. Like I think he's like 6'5", over 200 pounds. He's pretty similar to Kevin Ball. So I would say he'd
be great for Uyghur.
Be outstanding for Uyghur 100%. You go Ball, Anderson, Uyghur, Hague. Like I think that could be super interesting. So maybe that's another name. And then just like some more depth players. Like if you think a guy like Aatu Ratu in Vancouver could be your 4th line center, could you throw $1.5 million at him and not give up anything in terms of compensation? You know, could that be an option? I look at, once again, Ty Karche in Seattle. There is some upside there. He's not having a great year this year, but could you throw $1.5 million at him on a 1 or 2 year contract and bring him in and maybe give him some more opportunity? Like those are the types of players if the Flames should be interested in if they want to go out and offer sheet somebody. It should not be the Bowen Byrams, the Gabe Villardis, Marco Rossi, JJ Peterka, Matthew Nyes, Mason McTavish. Like those guys are all going to cost you your 1st round pick. The guys like Bourque, Begrin in Detroit, Nick Robertson, Nick Hague, Ty Karche, Aatu Ratu. Those are the types of guys I think the Flames should be going after, and not the big dogs in this conversation.
As much fun as a Rossi would be, I'd really like the Maverick Bourque one myself. If I were to go pick a guy to target, that would be a guy to target. I like the Nick Hague one as well. It's an interesting conversation for sure, Robert. What's coming up from you on flamesnation.ca? What the folks have to listen forward to, and where can they find you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically just going to regurgitate everything I said about the offer sheets here and probably put that in article form. So look out for that, and I'll probably have a couple other things coming up this week. Just haven't really decided yet, but stay tuned.
That's Robert Munich. He's at Ring of Fire CGY across your social media. I'm Vintage Johnny 84 as well. And don't forget to follow the show Red Mile Rundown wherever you get your social media or podcast platform. Thank you so much for joining us, making us a part of your podcast rotations. Enjoy the games this week. The Flames have a couple of really intriguing matchups here, and hopefully we can get some more points here and keep piling up as we chase for that wild card. Enjoy the hockey. We will see you guys in 1 week. Talk to you later.